so often there comes out a comic book which is not fantastic, it's not great, it's not earth-shattering, it doesn't change everything you know about the genre, but what it does is it provides a story that's much better than it has any right to be. And that's G.I. Joe Cobra Special #1. It's not earth-shattering, it's not game-changing, but what it is a very interesting take on Xamot and Tomax, the twins from the Cobra side of the G.I. Joe Cobra conflict. Now, Xamot and Tomax, being twin brothers, being psychically linked in some way, that idea of the psychic link has kind of dropped away in the new G.I. Joe series from IDW. But what you have are these two twin brothers who are brought up in despair, built to be terrorists from day one, and find themselves at the head of a large global empire. Now, as they join forces with Cobra, they fall into the G.I. Joe Cobra miniseries that came out earlier this year, and the events in that book forever changed Xamot and Tomax. What you have in the story presented here in this book is a palindrome. Much like their names and much like their twin dual identity, the story starts with how the two boys are born, brought up together, build this empire. You have the events of the G.I. Joe Cobra miniseries, and then the rest of the book is how they fell apart and become different individuals. What's so amazing about this book is how well the story is structured from front to back, providing your build-up and then your fall apart. It's really kind of surprising how good it is in a book based off a toy line and cartoon and really not too good action movie that just hit theaters recently. So all in all, while it's not a great book, it's definitely better than it should be, and definitely one worth checking out. Being a sucker for time travel stories, I got to admit that I got a big kick out of the Justice League of America 80-page special. Sure, it costs a little more, but it's 80 pages, so you're getting a lot of story. Now, usually what happens in one of these specials is they take a bunch of stories that, for one reason or another, never saw print and cobble them together and throw them out there just to get them published. But what they've actually done in this special is they gave a framework story of the Justice League being split up and sent through time, and then a bunch of different writers and artists tackle what happens in those different time periods. Then, of course, at the end, they're all brought back together for the grand finale. And what's so great about this book is that you've got so many different stories with so many different characters, so many different, classic outlooks on some of these Old West or Middle Ages or whatever going on. It's really great to see how different people tackle these ideas. Some of them feel maybe a little more like an Elseworld story than what you'd expect in the classic time travel story, but still, it's a lot of fun, and it's a really good read, and at 80 pages, it'll keep you occupied for a while. One thing about the Green Lantern books and the way they treat Blackest Night differently than the rest of the DC Universe is that they see it more as a war. These different factions are going up against each other, whereas in most of your other books like Blackest Night Batman, Blackest Night Superman, they all look at it as a horror movie. You have the zombies coming back from the dead. But what's happening here in Green Lantern is we find Carol Ferris, the Star Sapphire, Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern, and Sinestro all being pulled back together by the new Indigo Lanterns. And you might wonder how these three could ever possibly work together, but here they do it. And it's with Sinestro attacking Mongol and taking back his core. And you gotta wonder, why would the Indigo Lanterns want this to happen? Why would they want to make Sinestro stronger? Why would Sinestro want to work with Star Sapphire and Green Lantern? And that's precisely what you want to feel while you're reading this book. This is adding a great level to the story, a great layer of everything that's going on. And it makes me so much happier that Blackest Night is the premier event this year in DC Comics. When I first heard about Die Hard Year One, I have to admit I was a little skeptical. After all, how are you going to take this great action movie franchise and turn it into this frame-by-frame hand-drawn book? But what Howard Chaykin has done here with Die Hard Year One is he's taken John McClane's first day on the force, basically, in New York City back in 1976, and he shows us just basically a great little cops and robbers tale set back in that time period. Now, this is issue 1 of 4, so there's a lot more to happen in this story. So this issue is a setup book. You're introduced to a lot of different characters in a lot of different places around New York City. You're starting to see how some of them are brought together and interact. You're also shown a glimpse of John McClane as a policeman and how he's really willing and able to go above and beyond the call of duty to put his body on the line to, bring just a simple pickpocketer to justice. But I have to admit that for everything it does that is not Die Hard related, it makes me that much happier to read the story. And if they're going to do miniseries outside of the regular Die Hard universe that just set up some of these grim and gritty cop tales, I'll be more than happy to read them. Spider-Man the Clone Saga was one of those storylines that came along and really divided the Spider-Man fan community. There are people who loved it and people who hated it, and one of the biggest problems was it was never meant to be as long a story as it ended up being. Editorial decided after a while that they needed to stretch it out to sell more issues of different books, and it got so convoluted and overwrought that most people just gave up on it. But now they're taking a look back and starting Spider-Man the Clone Saga miniseries. This is to present the story as it was originally intended as a 6-issue story arc. Now I have to admit that it does a pretty good job of jumping through some of the initial storyline beats, going at a rather quick pace to let you know that it is going to flow through a lot of the stuff and not drag it out like the original story did. However, there's not a whole lot going on here that's really all that exciting. You've seen it before, you've read it before. Now perhaps several issues in we're going to hit some new stuff that's going to be a lot more interesting than what's going on here, but for an opening issue it's just kind of mediocre.
Comic book reviews are brought to you by Killin' Enterprises, with video games, toys, DVDs, CDs, and comic books. Everything you need in one store, KillinEnterprises.com.